I never wanted this.
She just wanted to get home after another day of trying to survive, but she got into the wrong car and ended up sitting next to the richest man in the country. While every woman dreamed of catching Wes Fairfax's attention, Alina was the only one who didn't recognize him. What started as a mistake turned into a closeness impossible to avoid. Between coffees that were never finished, lingering looks, and a billionaire who seemed to see every pain she hid, Alina discovered something dangerous. Sometimes, the person who changes your life shows up when you can least afford to fall in love. Hi, I'm Kay. A special shout out to those of you watching Book 1 for free here on the My Stories platform, completely ad-free and uninterrupted. Chapter 1. The Wrong Door in the Rain. Seattle rain doesn't fall. It works its way into the seams of your coat, between your fingers, between the wet strands plastered to my forehead, and convinces me, step by step, that I won't be able to keep my feet on the ground all the way home. I leave the university library at 9 on the dot. The guard at the front desk gives me a sidelong glance, the way he always does when he sees a scholarship student running off into the dark, and wishes me goodnight in a tone that sounds like an apology. I thank him. I don't tell him my phone died halfway through the last pharmacology summary. I don't tell him the app confirmed a black car before the screen went dead. I don't tell him my mother is waiting for me to take her 10 o'clock meds. The sidewalk gleams. The cars, headlights pass by, blurred, as if someone had smeared a layer of oil between me and the world. I clutch my backpack against my chest, where I keep the handout that can't get wet, and I look for the car. Black, sedan, in front of the side gate. The driver must have the interior light off to save battery, I think. The way I think about almost everything, trying to defend the stranger before holding anything against him. And there it is. Pulled up against the curb, dark windows, a shape in the front seat I can barely make out. I run. Water splashes from my sneakers up to the hem of my pants. I rap 2 knuckles on the back window, step back, and when I hear the lock give with a soft click, I pull open the rear door. I toss my backpack onto the seat. I dive in head first. I shut the door. I let out a breath. Sorry I'm late, I say, still rubbing my nose with the back of my hand. I thought the rain would let up and it only got worse. You can take Olive, I'll show you the way. It's faster because of the sentence dies in my mouth. The smell inside the car isn't pine air freshener. It's new leather and something that costs more than 3 months of my rent. The dashboard isn't blinking the red of an app. The driver doesn't greet me, and I, finally, turn my head to the right. There's a man beside me. He's sitting with his back straight, one leg crossed at the knee, a closed book balanced on his thigh. Dark suit, no tie, collar open at 2 buttons. His face is all sharp angles, the kind that seem made to be photographed from a distance. Short, dark hair, still combed despite the hour, and his eyes, when they finally meet mine, are the color of a steel that's already taken a lot of beating to get there. He doesn't raise his voice. He lowers it. Where do you think you're going? For a second, I don't answer. Not because I don't know, because his voice is so calm that I understand, before I can even reason it through, that I'm in the wrong car. Oh my God, I whisper. My hand is already on the handle. Sorry, I'm sorry. I swear. I ordered a car. I thought this was it. I'll get out right now. I pull the handle. The door doesn't open. The driver, who I can now see in the rearview mirror, an older man with graying hair, watches me with the polite patience of someone who sees this kind of nonsense every day. Central locking. Of course. You can unlock it, I say, turning to the man with the book. I try to keep my voice steady. I'll just walk, really. I'm so sorry about A streak of movement on the sidewalk across the street cuts me off. 3 figures coming out of an alley. Hoods up, walking a little too unhurried to be harmless. One of them looks straight at the car, not out of curiosity, out of assessment. The man beside me follows my gaze without moving his neck, just his eyes. Then he comes back to me. No urgency. Pelham, he says quietly. Go ahead. Yes, sir. The car pulls away from the curb with the smoothness of something that never had to floor it. I rest my temple against the cold glass just to have somewhere to lean my shame. The rain streaks the window, warping the street, warping the hoods, warping what little is left of my night. I can get out at the next light, I murmur. Really? You can. He still doesn't look at me. He opens the book. He doesn't read. I stay quiet for a whole block. I lift the backpack off my lap, set it on the floor between my feet, and in that movement my hand trembles. It's not the cold. Okay, it's the cold too, but it's also because I had bread and coffee for lunch at 2 in the afternoon, and now it's a little past 9 at night. I lace my fingers over my knee to hide it. He notices. He doesn't say anything. You study? He asks. The question comes out so neutral it could have been about the weather. Nursing. 4th semester. Scholarship? I look at him. I take my time answering, because that question usually comes with a certain built-in disdain, and I'm already too tired to fire back with any grace. Yeah, I say. Scholarship. He nods. Barely. There's no condescension. There's just an invisible note being made behind those gray eyes. I don't like being noted down. And you work, he continues. It isn't a question. How do you know? He finally looks. His gaze lands on my coffee shop uniform, which shows through the half-open collar of my wet coat, then drops to my hand on my knee. He doesn't answer with words. He doesn't need to. I button my coat up to my neck, more out of pride than cold. You can stop at the next corner, I say. Just turn right on Pine. Pelham, he says. Yes, sir, Pine. The car turns. I recognize the peeling blue gate of my building before any street sign, before the yellow light that's been flickering for months with no one to replace it. I'm ashamed that the gate is peeling blue. I'm ashamed of being ashamed. I grip the strap of my backpack. The car stops. The locks release with that same soft click. I grab the strap, open the door, put one foot on the sidewalk. Wait. I stop, without turning. Take the umbrella. I look at the front seat, where Pelham is already holding out, ready, a long black handle. It's not the kind of umbrella you buy at a drugstore. No, thank you, I say. I live right there, and I get out. I don't slam the door. I close it carefully, because expensive cars don't deserve gratuitous rudeness, even when you're embarrassed. I don't look back. I cross the sidewalk with the rain still beating on the crown of my head, push the blue gate open with my shoulder because my hand is busy with the backpack, and only when I'm on the second step of the inner staircase do I let myself breathe. Outside, the car hasn't left. Through the glass of the hall, I see the sedan stopped, engine low. I see his shape in the back seat, motionless. I see Pelham look once at the building number, then at the upper corner of the window, where I know there's a tiny street sign, then at the dashboard clock. Noting it down, I run up the stairs, 3 steps at a time, until I hear the key turn before I even touch it. My mother opens the door, thin inside her robe, and looks me up and down. Sweetheart, you're dripping. I know. Where was the app? It came. She looks at me a second longer. She doesn't ask again. She goes to the stove for the tea water that's been ready for who knows how long. I collapse into the kitchen chair without taking off my coat. I reach into the backpack for the handout to check if it got wet, and I discover, at the bottom, that something is missing. My student ID. I rummage through the inside pocket. I rummage through the front pocket. I rummage through the coat pockets. I think about the exact moment I opened the backpack, when I threw it into the car, when I pulled my hand out to find the handle. I see, without even closing my eyes, the blue plastic rectangle sliding from the side pocket onto the dark leather seat. And somewhere in Seattle, maybe still parked at my gate, a man whose name I never asked has my photo, my full name printed, my enrollment number, my major, my university, everything. I rest my forehead on the cold table. Outside, the sound of an expensive engine pulling away from the curb. Chapter 2. The Customer with the Coffee That Never Ends. The coffee shop opens at 7 in the morning on Saturday, and by 7:17 I'd already spilled steamed milk on the counter twice. It's not the kind of thing that usually happens to me. I'm methodical. I'm fast. But I've slept badly for 2 days now, and when that catches up with me, I mix up the steamer lever with the grinder lever. Quentina comes in 10 minutes after my shift starts, with that fabric scrunchie holding her curly hair up high on her head, backpack slung across her body, the face of someone who slept less than I did. Morning. Sunshine, she says, and grabs the rag out of my hand before I can react. Sit down a minute. I can't. Sit down a minute, Alina. Quentina has been a nursing classmate since first semester, and is the only person who can get me to do what I don't want to do without raising her voice. I'll stay on my feet, I negotiate, but I'll eat something. Deal accepted. I bite into half of a bruised pear from the morning tray, while she wipes the counter, and tells me she saw Thursday's rain on the news, and that the guy on the police call was from my building's street. I came by car, I say. She stops with the rag in midair. You don't have a car. It came. She gives me a sidelong look. What kind of car? Quentina. Drop it. What kind of car? Alina. I sigh. I look at the door. There's no one yet. Black, I say. Sedan, dark windows, gray-haired driver they called Pelham. The rag falls to the floor. She doesn't bend down to pick it up. Pelham, she repeats. Quentina. Pelham, she says again. And this time it isn't a question. It's a calculation. Alina. Was there a man in the back seat? I don't answer. Was there a man in the back seat? There was. I already told you. I got into the wrong car. He told the driver to go. End of story. Alina. She grips both my shoulders like she's about to shake me, then gives up, and just stares at me as if I'd just told her I'd seen a comet. Do you know who Wes Fairfax is? I blink. Should I? She makes that face she makes when she gets a bad grade on a test she thought she'd aced. Alina, my love, the richest man in this whole country, magazine covers, the one who bought the stadium, the one whose driver, she lowers her voice, is named Pelham. I lean my hip against the counter, just to be safe. No, I say, it's a coincidence. Pelham is a prize dog name. Alina, there aren't two. The door chimes. We serve, we clean. We serve, we clean. For over 2 hours, I almost convince myself she's exaggerating, that there are plenty of drivers named Pelham, that Seattle is big, until the chime sounds again, near 10, and the smell of new leather comes in ahead of its owner. I recognize the step, which is silent. I recognize the way the air inside the coffee shop changes temperature without changing temperature. When I look up, he's standing 3 paces from the counter. Same dark suit, pale gray shirt, no tie, empty hands, a direct gaze. Quintina drops the paper cup she was assembling. No one comments. The other 2 customers in the room don't even notice. But she noticed, and he noticed that she noticed, and I noticed that he noticed, and he, finally, looks at me and waits. Good morning, I say. What can I get you? Some corner of his mouth moves. It isn't a smile. It's the acknowledgement that I chose not to give him a name. An Americano. No sugar. To go? To stay. He nods his chin toward the corner table, the one tucked against the corner window, the one no one chooses because it catches the draft from the door. He goes over there, sits facing the counter, his back to the wall. He takes a small brown envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. He sets it on the table, on top of the napkin. Quintina elbows me. It's him, she whispers. Alina. It's him. I got it. Quintina. You got it, but you don't get it. Make the Americano. I'll make it, but you take it over. I take the Americano when it's ready, set it on the white ceramic saucer, arrange the little spoon, cross the room without too much hurry. I set the cup down on his table. I step back. Anything else? The card. I stop. He pushes the envelope 2 centimeters in my direction with his index finger. He looks at my hand on the edge of the table, where my fingers have started trembling again for the same reason as Thursday. I didn't have lunch. We found it in the seat, he says. I figured you'd come get it. You could have mailed it. I could have. He doesn't add why he didn't mail it. He waits. I take the envelope. Inside, the blue card is intact, no creases. With it, a little slip of white paper with a single line in black pen. I tuck it into my apron pocket without reading it in front of him. Thank you. Sit, he says. I'm working. You are. Sit a minute. I can't. The gray eyes rise from my wrist to my face for the first time. There's no command. There's a very quiet curiosity that unsettles me more than a command would have. All right, he says. I go back to the counter. Quintina intercepts me behind the machine. What did he say? That he returned the card. That's it. Quintina, drop it. She drops it. But she doesn't take her eye off him for the rest of the morning. He stays at that table for 1 hour and 40 minutes. I know because I checked the clock 4 times. He doesn't open his phone. He doesn't take a call. He takes 1 sip of the Americano when it arrives, sets the saucer in the center of the table. The cup sits there, full to the brim, minus 1 sip, until it goes cold. Near noon, he gets up. He comes to the counter. How much? On the house. Quintina blurts out before I kill her with a look. She shrugs. No guilt. Charge me, he says, calmly. I charge him. He pays. And the bill he puts on the little tip tray is worth more than the Americano, and my hour combined. I don't pretend I didn't see it. Good morning, he says. Good morning. He leaves. The chime sounds. The door closes. I let out, finally, the breath I'd been holding in little pieces. Quintina holds the bill up to the light. Alina, Quintina, that man came back to see you. That man came back to return a card. By mail, Elena, by mail. I finish my shift, take off my apron, grab my backpack, and only reach into the pocket out on the sidewalk, where the gray Saturday light hits the wet asphalt. I take out the card. I take out the paper. A man's handwriting. Firm. No flourish. 4 words. Eat something today. I lift my head. He's standing on the sidewalk across the street, leaning against the side of the black sedan. Pelham at the wheel. The window rolled down just enough for me to be sure. He doesn't cross. He doesn't wave. He just watches me as if to confirm that I read it. I put the paper in my pocket. I cross the street without looking both ways, because I'm already looking at him, and I stop a step away. You understand, I say, and my voice comes out steadier than I expected. That there are people in the world whose breakfast is none of your business. I understand. So don't send notes. All right? All right? All right. I stand there, waiting for sarcasm, a defense, an offer of a ride. None comes. Good afternoon, Mr. Fairfax, I say, because now I know his name and I want him to know that I know. His mouth moves for the second time today. Almost a smile. Good afternoon, Miss Winters. I cross the street again. I don't look back until I'm 2 blocks ahead, and when I look, the sedan is already gone. In the afternoon, at home, my mother is on the couch with the patchwork blanket over her legs, watching a recipe show with the sound low. I kiss the top of her head as I pass. Did a fancy car come bring you home? She asks, without taking her eyes off the TV. The neighbor in number 2 said she saw it. A classmate from school gave me a ride. I lie. The car is his dad's. Mom. I didn't say anything, sweetheart. She turns the page of the magazine in her lap. I go to my room, drop the backpack, take the little paper out of my pocket. I set it on top of the dresser, on top of the Bible no one reads, but no one takes away from there, and I stand looking at the 4 words like someone staring down a small enemy. The doorbell rings. I go to the door thinking it's the neighbor from number 2. I open it without looking through the peephole, because ours never worked. It isn't the neighbor. It's Pelham, standing on the stair landing, holding with both hands a brown envelope identical to the morning's. Miss, he says, his voice lower than I imagined, with the soft accent of someone who learned to speak so as not to wake anyone. Mr. Fairfax asked me to leave this. Mr. Fairfax, I repeat, slowly. Yes, miss. Here, at my building. Yes, miss. I take the envelope. It's heavier than the morning's. Pelham gives a tiny nod of his head, goes down 2 steps, and before I can close the door, he turns around. Miss, yes. He asked if you had eaten lunch. I keep my hand on the handle. I don't answer. Pelham nods, like someone who understands the answer in the silence, goes down the rest of the stairs, and disappears. I close the door. I lean my back against it. I look at the brown envelope in my hands and I realize, without even opening it, that this man has no intention whatsoever of having been merely a mistake on one rainy night. Chapter 3. The Debt No One Paid. The week wore on in small frictions I pretended not to count. Wes showed up at the coffee shop 3 times in 5 days. Always before 8. Always the Americano he only tasted. Always the corner table where he could see the whole door. I served him the way I served anyone. He thanked me as if it were the only important thing of that morning. Quentina laughed between orders. You really think he comes here for the coffee? She whispered, leaning against the counter, drawing a cup harder than she needed to. That Americano isn't even his. That Americano is an excuse. I know what it is, I said quietly. So nothing. I work. He pays. End of story. She huffed. It was Tuesday. And on Tuesday, Mabel had an appointment in the early afternoon. I'd counted coins the night before and had enough left over for the bus, not the cab. It's fine. It's always been like this. Wes raised his eyes from the corner and found me, on the other side of the shop, holding a pitcher of hot milk. He didn't smile. He looked at my hands for a second, too long to be distraction, too short to be intrusion, and went back to his book. I looked away. I felt heat in my ears and hated myself for it. He looks at your hands, Quentina whispered, passing behind me with a tray. He always looks at your hands. Shut up, Quentina. He left a little before 9. He left bills that covered the coffee 3 times over and went off without saying goodbye. I went to get the cup and found he'd drunk less than half, as always. I carried the book to the counter, hardcover, worn, with a ribbon marking a page. I didn't open it. I put it in a box behind the counter, along with forgotten umbrellas and ownerless scarves, and thought he'd come back at some point to get it. Men from that world don't forget anything by accident. On Wednesday, Mabel got worse. It wasn't a crisis. It was a subtle worsening, the kind only someone who's been caring for years recognizes. The breathing too short, the way of coughing as if asking permission. I left the coffee shop running at 7 at night, still smelling of coffee in my hair, and took 2 buses to the hospital. I arrived breathless at the front desk, asked for my mother's ward, and the girl behind the glass typed in the surname Winters, with that trained expression of someone who's worked in a hospital too long. She stopped typing. Winters, is it? Mabel Winters. That's right. Have you been to social services today, miss? No. Why? Doctor, Nilva asked that. As soon as you arrived, you go straight to her office. 2nd floor, end of the hall, on the left. Did something happen to my mother? No. Your mother is stable. It's something else. I took the stairs because the elevator was slow. I reached Dr. Nilva's office out of breath, and she greeted me with that gentle voice social workers learn in college. "Sit, Alina. Do you want water? I want to know why I was called here." She smiled without joy and pushed a folder across the desk. "Your mother's financial balance was paid off this afternoon. In full." I looked at the folder. I didn't touch it. "What do you mean?" "Balance zeroed out. The hospital received the amount by bank transfer at 3:18. "Who paid it?" A request for anonymity was made. "Who paid it?" She hesitated. She pushed the folder one more centimeter. I finally opened it. It was a simple receipt, stamped by the finance department. I read the amount and felt the room sway. It wasn't the kind of sum you carry in a purse. It was the sum I'd been stacking up for almost 2 years in installments that never ended. In the bottom corner, in a small field reserved for internal reference, a short surname was printed. A surname I'd learned to spell the previous Monday, when Quintina threw in my face that this man was the richest in the country. Fairfax. "You recognize it," Dr. Nilva said quietly. "I recognize it. You're under no obligation to accept this. If you want, we can return it. I can issue a reversal until 8 tomorrow morning. The installment plan I already had. 300 and something a month for the rest of my life, shift after shift. The coffee shop, school, the bus, the tremor in my hand. It was the first time in a long while that I thought maybe I couldn't manage on my own, and that sentence made me sick of myself. I closed the folder. I need to think. You have until 8 in the morning. I left the hospital at 9:45. I took the first cab in line and gave the address of the Fairfax headquarters, an address I'd never typed in my life, and that came out of my mouth as if I'd memorized it on purpose. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror and drove off without comment. The headquarters was downtown, in a dark glass building that took up a whole block. It rained on the way, of course, because the city knew no other way to say hello. I got out in the lobby with the coffee shop uniform under my coat and held the folded receipt in my pocket like a small knife. The lobby receptionist nearly called security. It was an older man, in a gray suit, who stopped him with a curt wave of his hand. He was coming out of a private elevator, holding a folder, and stopped when he saw me. "Are you Alina Winters?" "I am. Hadrian Cole, Mr. Fairfax's lawyer. And, in what's left of the workday, his friend." He held out his hand. I didn't shake it. He withdrew the gesture without taking offense. "You're here about the hospital, I imagine." "I'm here to talk to him. He's in a meeting that ends around midnight. Maybe it's better to schedule." "I don't schedule anything." Hadrian looked at me with a cold curiosity, the kind of elegant sarcasm a billionaire's lawyer develops out of necessity. "Then I figured you'd say that." "Where's the elevator?" He walked me there, tapped his card on the reader as a courtesy, and stayed in the lobby. I went up alone. The hallway on the 32nd floor had dark carpet that muffled my steps. The waiting room was empty, only one light on behind a double door, at the end. I didn't knock. I pushed it open. Wes was standing, in shirt sleeves, in front of an enormous window looking out over the wet city. Papers on the desk, 2 empty glasses, his suit jacket thrown over the armchair. When he heard the door, he turned. He didn't seem surprised. He seemed like someone who had calculated the odds of my showing up and marked the exact time. "Good evening, Alina. Don't call me that. Call me Winters. You can call me Winters, since you like knowing people's surnames so much." I threw the receipt onto the desk. It landed between a pen and a glass, with the damp mark of my fingers. "You shouldn't have gone there so late at night, and you shouldn't have paid my mother's bill. You wanted her to stay in debt. I wanted to pay it. You can't afford to pay it." The sentence came out without malice, and that's why it hurt more. He took a step toward me and stopped when I backed away. He didn't come closer. "And do you have any idea what this looks like?" I said, with a voice steadier than I felt. "What people are going to say?" I asked for anonymity. In the internal reference field, it says Fairfax. It was a system error. I'll have it corrected tomorrow. "You have everything corrected, don't you? Hospital bill, internal reference, the rain too, I guess." "Alina, don't call me that," he breathed. It was just one breath, but I saw his shoulder drop a centimeter. The first time I'd seen a man like him retreat inside his own body. "I'm not trying to buy you. You know perfectly well it looks like you are." "I know." He tilted his head slightly, as if conceding a point. "I know how it looks. I did it anyway." "Why?" He took so long to answer that I thought maybe he wouldn't. "And some people confuse pride with survival because they've never had anyone willing to catch them before the fall," he said, and his voice was neither cold nor sweet. It was exhausted. "I'm not asking for anything in return, but I wasn't going to be able to sleep knowing your mother was in debt while I was up here looking out over this city." I stood still. I had no ready answer, and I deeply hated that he'd hit it on the first try. "You don't know me," I said, and my voice came out lower than I wanted. "I know. You don't know my mother. I know. So why?" Because I got tired of pretending I don't think about you. The room went silent. The glass trembled slightly with the wind. I picked up the receipt, folded it, tucked it into my pocket, and left without saying anything more. Hadrian Cole was still in the lobby when I came down, with one eyebrow raised that never quite became a question. I passed by him without looking. I went back to the apartment, changed out of my uniform, gave Mabel her nighttime medicine through the crack in her bedroom door. I sat in the kitchen. I looked at the receipt. There were a little less than 10 hours until the reversal, and every minute that passed was a choice I was making without admitting I was making it. An hour later, I was on my feet again, going down the stairs toward the rain. I took the bus late at night, transferred on the Central Avenue, stopped in front of the glass building for the second time. The receptionist recognized me, and this time just pointed to the elevator with a small gesture, like someone handing over a secret. I went up. Wes was still in the office. The light behind the double door was still on, and I understood with a pang in my chest that he'd stayed. When I pushed the door open, he turned faster this time, and there was something in his face I'd never seen before. Relief, maybe, or fear that it was relief. I was soaked again. My coat dripped on the carpet. He didn't say anything. He went to the armchair, picked up the suit jacket thrown there, crossed the room slowly, and held it out to me. It was a dark coat, heavy, of a fabric I chose not to evaluate. It wasn't the time. "I don't need it," I said, but my voice trembled. "I know. Take it anyway." I took it. I took off mine, hung it on the back of a chair, put his on over the uniform that still smelled of hot milk. It fit wrong, wide in the shoulders, long in the sleeves. It smelled of a dry cologne and a whole night of work. "I didn't come back to say I accept," I said, looking at the floor. "I know. I came back because I didn't want you to spend the night thinking I hated you." He didn't answer. I think he understood that any answer would be wrong. When I left, I took the coat with me. I didn't return it. He didn't ask for it back. The rain had let up, and the cab waiting at the door was just any cab. No black sedan, no rearview mirror driver. I got in, sat down, and only when the city started passing by the window did I realize I was crying slowly, without sobbing, like someone who loses something important and gains something at the same time. In the inside pocket of the coat, I discovered a little before dawn, there was a folded card with a number written by hand. Below the number, 3 short words, anytime. Chapter 4. The Kiss on the Rooftop. The phone rang at 6:02 in the morning on Friday. I know the exact time because I woke up before it rang, the way you wake when your body already knows something is wrong before any warning. I looked at the dark ceiling of my room and heard the phone vibrate on the dresser as if it had taken its time on purpose. It was the hospital. It was the voice of a night shift nurse I knew from the memory of her timbre. That voice that learns to carry bad news without letting a single word fall along the way, saying what I'd already heard other times on other mornings, with slightly different words but the same shape of sentence. "Miss Winters, your mother had an episode a little while ago. She's stable, but we need you to come in." I hung up. I put the thin coat over my pajamas, then remembered the dark coat from the office, and switched. His fit wrong and smelled of 2 nights gone by, of the cologne I still hadn't managed to name. I didn't have time to explain that to myself. I grabbed the key, grabbed my bag, went down the building stairs 2 steps at a time. The cab took 11 minutes, and I counted all 11 with my phone in my hand and my feet on the cold floor of the building hallway, without sitting on the step that was wet with condensation. When I arrived, Mabel was already sedated. The nurse explained things in that delicate tone of a war report, measured so as not to scare too much and not to soften too little. Respiratory crisis, sharp drop in saturation, quick intervention, stabilized. The on-call doctor would come by again at 8. I could go in 2 at a time. There was no one else to go in with me, so I went in alone. Mabel was smaller. It was my imagination, of course. A mother doesn't get smaller. But I, in that plastic chair beside her bed, with her hand in mine and the low noise of the heart monitor filling the silence of the room, thought she'd sunk half a hand's width into the mattress. The light in the room was that weak yellow hospital light that neither illuminates nor hides anything. I kissed her forehead. I said quiet things I won't repeat. I left when the nurse told me she was going to change the medication. That's when I saw Wes at the end of the hall. He was standing near the automatic coffee machine, hands in the pockets of his coat, talking quietly with someone I didn't know. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and the machine's bad coffee, and the ceiling lights flickered at that low frequency that irritates without you noticing. When he saw me, Wes stopped talking mid-sentence. The man beside him nodded a greeting at me and stepped away, unhurried. "Who told you?" I asked, stopping a step from him. "Hadrian. Hadrian had no way of knowing. I asked him to pay attention. I was breathless for a second. It wasn't the right answer. It was the true answer, which was worse, because it meant he'd anticipated that I might need something without my asking. I looked at the shiny linoleum floor, at my sneakers wet from the street's rain, at his coat on my body, and I understood that I didn't have the strength that day to fight with anything. I didn't ask you to come. I know. I won't be able to receive you properly. You don't have to receive me. He took me to the waiting room. He sat in the chair beside mine without asking permission, without resting his arm against mine, without offering a shoulder. He stayed. It was the only thing he did that whole day. He stayed, with that stillness of someone who learned that presence is different from interference. Around 8, he bought a stale roll from the vending machine and shared it with me without comment, breaking it in half with the care of someone sharing the last thing they have. Around 11, he held my coffee cup from the machine when my hand trembled as I took it. Around 2 in the afternoon, he went to talk to the front desk when the on-call doctor asked about kinship, and I, without realizing it, had started to say it was just me. He came back from the desk, sat down again, and said, quietly, I said I was 2. You were 2 what? Family. I didn't answer, but I let my shoulder lean against his for a second, and he didn't move to take advantage of it or to pull away. He stayed still with that deliberate immobility, as if he understood that that shoulder was the only thing I could offer that day, and that it was enough. The afternoon dragged on in short cycles. I went into the room twice more. Mabel woke once, saw me, smiled weakly, asked if I'd eaten. I lied and said yes. She knew I was lying. She went back to sleep with her hand inside mine, her fingers cold, and her pulse steady on the monitor. At 8 at night, the doctor came and said Mabel had stabilized for good, that her condition was good given the circumstances, that it was safe for me to go home and rest a few hours and come back in the morning. I thanked her. I didn't leave. When the hallway emptied, near 11, I got up without warning, grabbed my bag, left the dark coat on the chair because it was warm inside the hospital, and went looking for the staircase that led to the rooftop. I knew there was a rooftop. I'd accompanied Mabel hospitalized too many times at this hospital, and on one of the late nights I'd seen nurses go up to smoke through the door at the end of the 5th floor hallway, behind a yellow exit sign. The kind of detail exhaustion stores without asking permission. I went up alone. The iron door creaked when I pushed it, and the icy air cut my face all at once. That damp Seattle cold that gives no warning and asks no permission. The sky was gray, even at night, heavy with that color Seattle wears all year round. The lights of the parking garage flickered below, and far off the city center gleamed with that big city indifference that goes about its rhythm regardless of what happens in hospitals. I went to the low wall. I rested my hands on the cold, rough concrete. I looked at the wet city and discovered I didn't want to think about anything, and discovered right after that, I couldn't. The tears came the way they'd come since I was 15. No noise, no warning, no right to complain about anyone. The door behind me creaked again. I didn't turn. I knew who it was by the step. You shouldn't have come up alone. I wanted to. I know. Still, he came to the low wall, stopped half a meter from me, rested his hands on the parapet, the same way mine were, side by side with that space between us that neither of us crossed. He didn't touch me. He didn't try to turn my face. He didn't say any movie line. For a moment, the two of us were quiet, looking at the city gleaming below, indifferent. I'm tired, he said, after a while, still with his gaze on the city, of pretending I don't think about you. I already told you. I'll say it again. I'm tired. This isn't the time for this. I know it isn't. I'm not going to kiss you or hug you or promise anything. I just came to let you know. I laughed, without sound. It was a short, strange laugh that came out before I could swallow it, the laugh that shows up when you're at your limit, and the world insists on being absurd. You came to let me know. I did. You're absurd. Probably. The rain started again. Fine. The kind that dampens more than wets, that settles on your hair and skin without you noticing until you're already soaked. He took off his coat, opened it, and covered my shoulders without touching his hand to my skin, with that precise care of someone who knows exactly where the limit is. It was the second time I'd worn a coat of his in 3 days. It fit wrong again. The shoulders too wide, the sleeves too long. It smelled of the same dry, calm cologne. I turned my face to look at him. It was at that moment that I did what no one expected. Not him, not me. I lifted my hand and touched his face. Slowly, as if checking whether it was real, I rested my palm on his jaw, beside his chin, and felt the short stubble of the end of the day scrape against my skin. He closed his eyes for a second, like someone struck by something small he hadn't expected to feel. Wes, I'm listening. I don't know what I'm doing. Neither do I. I don't have clothes for this. I don't have money for this. I don't have a healthy mother for this. I know. So I don't either. I didn't understand the sentence. I think he didn't either. But the air between us went short, and the gray sky pulled back a centimeter. And the kiss happened before either of us officially decided. It was slow. It was silent. It was the way you surrender when you're tired of pretending you can carry everything alone. His hand came to the nape of my neck slowly, holding me the way you hold a glass that might fall, with that gentle firmness that neither grips nor lets go. Mine stayed on his jaw. There was no hurry. There was no victory. There was tiredness on both sides, and there was relief, that deep, silent relief of arriving somewhere you didn't know you'd been looking for. When we separated, he rested his forehead against mine, still without saying anything. The fine rain wet his hair and mine, and I felt a drop run from the corner of his temple to the corner of his mouth. The rooftop was completely quiet. Down below, the city kept its rhythm, but up there it was as if the air had decided to stop for a moment. "I'm going down now," I said, quietly. "I need to see my mother. I'll walk you. You don't have to." "I know." Still, we went down the stairs together. We didn't talk. The metal steps echoed both our steps, and the coat was still on my shoulders. Mabel was sleeping deeply when I went in. The nurse smiled slightly when she saw me and looked away, in the polite way of someone who'd understood, through the room window that looked out onto the hall, that the man in the dark coat had stayed all night. Wes waited in the waiting room. I dozed in the chair beside Mabel for about 2 barely counted hours, my neck bent in a way that would hurt in the morning. When I came out, near 9 in the morning on Saturday, the weak Seattle sun was trying to pierce the layer of gray over the parking garage, without much success. He was standing near the exit door, with the coat that had been mine the night before folded over his arm, waiting with that patience I still didn't quite know how to name. We crossed the hospital lobby side by side, the soles of our shoes squeaking on the clean linoleum. He took my hand just before the automatic door, slowly, like someone asking permission one last time before stopping asking. I let him. The door opened, with that pneumatic sigh. The air from outside came with the smell of wet ground and the grass of the narrow garden, the hospital entrance called a garden. It was at that moment, in that exact second between the lobby and the sidewalk, that a man who'd been standing across the street, beside a motorcycle covered with a tarp, raised something small in front of his face. I didn't see what it was. I saw a short flash, faint, the size of a blink, and at the moment I thought it had been the reflection of the weak sun on a garage window. Wes stopped walking for half a second. He looked across the street with that quiet attention that doesn't seem like alertness but is. The man was already turned away, walking fast, the motorcycle tarp wrapped around his arm. "What was that?" I asked. "Probably nothing." "Wes, we'll talk in the car." Pelham pulled the black sedan up in front of the hospital by then, and I didn't even ask how he'd been called. I got in. Wes got in beside me. The door closed with that muffled click of an expensive car, and the silence of the car's interior swallowed the lobby, the parking garage, the street, the short flash across the way. The seat smelled of leather and that dry climate-controlled air that the wet outside made even more distinct. My hand was still in his. I closed my eyes for a moment and rested my temple against the cold glass. I heard the discreet rustle of his jacket, the minimal sound of a thumb touching a screen, and then the muffled click of the phone going back into his pocket. When I opened my eyes at the traffic light, he was looking at my hand in his with a kind of calm I'd never seen before. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "It is. It isn't." He lifted my hand to his mouth, pressed his lips to my fingers, and answered without letting go. "Everything's okay now. I'll handle the rest." The city passed by the window with that slowness of a wet morning, the downtown buildings reflecting the gray light dully, the sidewalks still nearly deserted. I only knew that his hand was holding mine, and that for the first time in a long while I wasn't tired the way I usually was. I didn't know it yet, but somewhere in that city, a photo was beginning to circulate. Chapter 5, The Statement. I woke before the alarm, the way it happens when your body already knows the day will be ugly before your head understands. The room was dark. Mabel was breathing peacefully in the room next door. I checked that by the sound, the way you check a stove flame. I stretched out my arm, pressed the remote of the small television on top of the dresser, and the blue light covered the walls. The headline was there before coffee, "Gold-digging coffee girl, the poor student who hooked the richest man in the country." I sat on the edge of the bed slowly, as if a sudden movement might make the screen change its mind. The photo was ours. I recognized first his dark coat on my shoulders, then my hand on his chest, then the hospital revolving door behind us. The angle was from far away, diagonal, slightly blurred at the edges, exactly the kind of image someone takes pretending to cover a motorcycle with a tarp across the street. I remembered the flash he'd said was probably nothing. It wasn't. The reporters spoke with that low vibration of scandal. They said my full name. They said I worked in a coffee shop near campus. They said my shift. They said my major. They said my mother was hospitalized, and that the hospitalization had been paid off mysteriously. Each true piece of information slid into a false sentence, and the whole thing came out looking like proof. I turned off the television. I sat in the dark, with the remote still warm in my hand. My chest rose and fell too fast, and I forced my breathing to slow down, the way they taught me to do on shifts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The air came in through my nose, out through my mouth. The air didn't know I'd become a headline. I could have called him. The dark coat was hanging on the back of the kitchen chair, with the folded card in the pocket, with the handwritten number and the 3 words I hadn't forgotten. Anytime. I didn't call. Not out of pride. I'd spent almost all my pride the week before. It was because, if I called, he'd solve the headline before I could decide what it had done to me. And I needed to know what it had done to me. First, alone. I showered with the hottest water the old shower could manage. I put on the coffee shop uniform. I passed by my mother's room on tiptoe. She was sleeping with her mouth slightly open, and the oxygen machine made the light, rhythmic noise that had become the background music of my life. I left for my shift as if it were any ordinary Saturday. It wasn't. The coffee shop was too crowded for the hour. From a distance, I recognized 3 girls from school who never showed up there. 2 were from my clinical group. The third I barely greeted in the halls. They sat at the middle table, with their phones propped on the edge of the tray, as if they were setting up to film. I also recognized a man in a suit I'd never seen, standing near the counter, waiting his turn with an open wallet in his hand. Quintina Mosley came in through the back door tying her apron. She caught the look on my face and understood before I spoke. "Who died?" she asked quietly, passing behind me. "Me," I answered. "This morning. On the news." She stopped tying the knot. "What news?" "National." Quintina said nothing more. She grabbed the dish towel, wiped the counter as if that counter were the problem, and disappeared into the back for 2 minutes. She came back with her phone in her pocket, and her chin raised a centimeter higher. I knew that chin. It was the chin of someone about to hit someone before noon. The first one at the middle table stood, straight hair, light polish, a smile trained to fake affection. Marlene, from my clinical group, the same one who copied my pharmacology summaries. "Elena," she said loudly, too loudly. "We had no idea you were working today. What a coincidence." I picked up the order pad. "And what can I get you?" "No, wait. She laughed as if I'd told a joke. "We just wanted to know if everything's okay. We saw the news. Crazy, right? You never said you knew Wes Fairfax." "I didn't know him," I answered, my pen still. "Do you want anything?" The second one leaned over the table. "We do clinical rotations too," she said quietly, smiling. "If you want to give us some tips on how to approach." The third one laughed without sound. I looked at the 3 of them for a second longer than I needed to. Not with anger. I had no anger to spare. I looked like someone who finally recognizes 3 faces in the dark. I wrote the order in silence. 3 lattes, 2 croissants, and went to the machine. The man in the suit approached the counter. He opened his wallet. He took out a handful of silver coins and set them on the marble, one by one, with careful haste, like someone tossing salt. "But for the gold digger," he said, without raising his eyes. "Advance tip." The coins rolled. One fell to the floor and kept spinning. I didn't move. My hand stopped on the machine lever. The noise of the steam covered for a second, the silence that had settled between the tables. Quintina came out from behind me like a slamming door. "Sir," she said, with the most pleasant smile of her career, "the house doesn't accept that kind of payment. Please collect your coins and leave." "I'm a customer," he answered. "You were," Quintina corrected. "Please." He looked at me like someone waiting for me to cry to validate the scene. I didn't cry. I looked at the spot between his 2 eyebrows and kept pressing the machine lever. The coffee came out. The cup filled. The man gathered the coins slowly, one by one, and left stomping. The door rang the little bell. The 3 girls at the middle table stood up together, pretending they had to leave. "We'll pay outside," one of them said, and didn't even look back. I finished the latte no one wanted anymore. Quintina took the cup out of my hand. "Go home," she said. "I'll cover." "I'm not going home." "You are." "Look at me." I looked. Her eyes were red with anger. "Go home, Elena. Today isn't your day to smile at customers." "I'll cover." I obeyed, for the first time the whole week. I took off the apron, folded it on the counter, grabbed my backpack. As I left, I caught a glimpse of the reflection of the small television hanging on the back wall. The headline had changed. Now it said, "Sources close to the Fairfax family would speak out later today. Sources close to the family." I knew the source's name. Now. She had a smile in the photo from before noon. I got home with the dark coat folded over my arm. I'd brought it, without knowing why, and stopped at the door of my mother's room. Mabel was awake. Her small television was on mute. The photo of the hospital revolving door, with my hand on his chest, took up the corner of the screen. "Come here, sweetheart," she said. I went. I sat on the edge of the bed, the same way I'd sat in the morning, only now with extra weight on my shoulders. She stretched out her hand and took mine. Her hand was thin. I'd registered that clinically 20 times that week and never let myself register it emotionally. "I know you're holding back," she said. "Because of me, Mom. Listen." Her voice trembled slightly, but it didn't falter. "You took care of everything your whole life, sweetheart. The house, the scholarship, me. You never let anyone catch you." I looked down, at her hand in my hand, at the thin ring she'd worn since before I was born. "Let someone catch you for a change," she said. "Even if it's just once, even if it's wrong, let them." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I rested my forehead on her thin shoulder and stayed there, still, without crying, because the crying had stayed behind at the coffee shop with the coins on the floor. She stroked my hair slowly. We stayed like that for a time I couldn't measure. When I lifted my head, the headline had changed again on the muted screen. Now there was a red banner, "Lev, Lobby of the Fairfax Headquarters." I picked up the remote. I turned up the sound. The camera showed the huge lobby, the pale marble floor, the discreet emblem on the wall behind. He came down the central elevator with Hadrian Cole a step behind, no ceremonial suit, his white shirt with the sleeve folded once. He wasn't wearing his badge. He wasn't wearing any of the trappings of his fortune. He walked to the makeshift podium and stopped. The silence of the lobby pressed through the television. "Good morning," Wes said, without greeting the press by the name of each outlet, the way trained men do. The camera focused on him, Behind, in the corner of the frame, I caught a glimpse of an elderly woman with impeccable white hair being escorted out of the lobby by 2 security guards, without fuss, with no photographer close enough to capture her face. I didn't know the name, yet. I'll be brief, because the matter doesn't deserve anyone's time. His voice was low, controlled, the way I already knew. "The woman photographed with me is Alina Winters, nursing student. She works at a coffee shop downtown. She takes care of her hospitalized mother." I held my breath. "Were you the one who entered her life?" Someone shouted from off-frame. He waited a second. "I was," he answered. "I entered her life without permission. On a rainy night, under circumstances that are none of your business. I kept entering after that, also without permission. She asked for nothing. She accepted almost nothing. The little she accepted from me, she accepted thinking I was a person, not a fortune." I held my mother's hand more firmly. "She never needed my money to have value," he said. "The problem isn't her. The problem is me, and the family I belong to, and the people close to that family who thought leaking an intimate photograph would solve a social circle annoyance." A murmur covered the lobby. "I know the names of these people," Wes continued, without raising his tone. "I'll deal with that internally. What I won't tolerate is any outlet, any colleague, any coffee shop customer humiliating this woman publicly again. I'll handle it." He paused. He looked straight into the camera. Straight, I felt, at me. "Alina, if you're watching," he said, "I know I didn't ask permission to talk about you here. You decide what you do with this. I just didn't want you to wake up to another day with a headline like that and think you were alone." I turned off the television before the end, not because it hurt, because I'd already understood everything I needed to understand, and I didn't want his words to become a spectacle in my living room. I pressed the red button on the remote. The screen went dark, and the silence of the room came back, only my mother's breathing and the oxygen machine. Mabel squeezed my hand. "And call him sweetheart." "Not yet," I said, and this time my voice was firm. "Tomorrow." She smiled. Small, tired, beautiful. I looked at the dark coat folded on the chair beside the bed, with the folded card in the pocket, with the 3 words I knew by heart. I didn't know yet what I was going to say, but, for the first time in a week, I knew that I was the one who would decide what to say, and that, alone, was worth more than any headline. Chapter 6. The One Who Chooses to Stay. Tuesday afternoon. The doorbell rang twice, slowly, with the patience of someone willing to wait. I opened the door with my hand still damp from the sink. Wes was standing in the dim hallway of my building. No suit, no assistant, No car in sight through the hallway window. Gray shirt, coat over his arm, hair a little out of place as if he'd run his hand through it many times before coming up the stairs. "Can I come in?" he asked. "You can?" I stepped aside. He came in. The apartment seemed smaller, as always happened when he was inside it, but this time it didn't bother me. I pointed to the kitchen chair, the same one where the dark coat still hung. He looked at the coat. He said nothing. He sat. I sat in the chair across from him. Between us, the formica table with the marks of decades past. "I didn't come with a speech," he said. "I came because you still haven't decided anything, and I need to hear that from you, not from the papers." I looked at my hands for a second. I saw the statement. "I know." I turned it off before the end. He raised an eyebrow slightly. "Why?" "Because I'd already understood," I said. "I didn't need the rest." He nodded, slowly, as if I'd said something that moved him, and he didn't want to show where. We were quiet for a while. Not the uncomfortable silence of the wrong car, nor the heavy silence of the office. A quieter silence, more domestic, with the noise of my mother's oxygen machine coming from far off. "How is she?" he asked. "Stable. She woke up at lunch. Ate half. A good half." I almost laughed. "A good half." He rested his forearms on the table. The folded sleeves showed a simple watch, no stones. I looked at his watch because it was easier than looking at his eyes. "I wanted to ask you 3 things," he said. "No rush for the answer. Go ahead. The first, are you okay?" I thought about the question before answering. "No," I said, "but I'm whole." "The second, do you want me to disappear?" I looked at him this time, at his eyes. They were tired, attentive, ready for any answer. "No," I said. His breathing slowed slightly. I noticed because I was trained to see that in sick bodies, and he'd just given me the first hint, in months, that that body also felt. "The third," he said, and his voice dropped a tone. "Are you willing to leave here with me tomorrow night? No photographer, no assistant, nothing. And let me ask you something I don't want to ask with your mother breathing on the other side of the wall." I looked at the wall that separated the kitchen from my mother's room. I thought of her telling me to let someone catch me for a change. "I am," I said. He nodded once. He didn't smile, but his whole face relaxed a millimeter on each side. We talked for another hour. About Mabel, about what he'd resolved internally that morning. He said the name Brizelda, without hatred, and without softening, just with the precision of someone removing a name from a list. About his fear of being loved for his surname. About my exhaustion from carrying everything alone. I said things I'd never said out loud to anyone. He listened. He didn't interrupt. When he left, I closed the door and rested my forehead against it. I didn't cry, but I breathed. Finally, deeply. Wednesday night, Pelham's car pulled up in front of my building. It wasn't the black sedan. It was a smaller car, discreet, no crest. Pelham got out, opened the door for me with the rearview mirror half-smile I already recognized, and said, "Good evening, Miss Winters." "Good evening, Pelham." Hair sorted on the inside, too. I laughed in spite of myself. More or less. Good enough. He closed the door. Wes was in the seat beside me. He didn't kiss me. He took my hand on the upholstery, squeezed once, and let go. That squeeze and release was the first sentence he said to me all night. The hotel was on a street with no special sign. We went up the service elevator. His choice. I thanked him in silence. To the rooftop. There was no one. A single round table in the corner. 2 chairs. Low candles. The city spread out below like a fallen constellation. No waiter in sight. The food was already on the table, on covered plates. "I asked for no one to be around," Wes said, pulling out the chair for me. "I hope it doesn't bother you." On the contrary, I sat. We ate slowly. Little conversation. A lot said with our eyes. At one point, he set down his glass and looked at me straight on. "I want to ask you something," he said. "The same thing I told you I'd ask. Ask. Do you choose to stay?" I set down my fork. I looked at him for a time that felt too long for both of us. I looked at the city below. I looked at my own reflection in the dark glass of the rooftop railing. I thought of Mabel, of Quintina, of the dark coat, of the photographer's flash, of the coins on the floor, of the 3 words folded in the inside pocket. "I stay," I said, "but I need to warn you about something." "Warn me. I'm not staying to be saved," I said, my voice low, firm. "I'm staying to be seen." He held my hand on the table. "It's the only thing I know how to do with you," he answered. We left the hotel by the service elevator again. Pelham dropped us off at his penthouse without comment. I'd never been on that floor. The hallway was short, with a low sconce on the side wall and a floor of dark wood. He took off his coat, hung it up. He turned on a single light in the living room and turned it off again. He came back to me in the hallway. I rested my hand on his chest first, the same way I'd rested it on the hospital rooftop, and this time he didn't wait. He tilted his face. The kiss was longer than the one on the rooftop, hotter, no rain and no witness. His hands found the nape of my neck, then my waist. I held the collar of his shirt with both hands, unhurried. He pulled back a centimeter, rested his forehead against mine. He breathed. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "I am." He held out his hand. He turned off the hallway sconce. The bedroom door closed behind us slowly. Morning came gray, in the way only Seattle knows how to be gray without offending anyone. I woke to the weak sun coming through the half-open curtain of the balcony, and for a second I didn't know where I was. Then I knew. The weight of his arm was on my waist. His breath was in my hair. I lay still for a while, looking at the ceiling, feeling that body I'd chosen to know. I got up slowly. I put on his gray shirt, which was thrown on the dresser chair, and went to the balcony barefoot. The view was bigger than I expected. The whole city below, still half wet from the night's drizzle, with lights going out one by one. I rested my hands on the cold railing and breathed. The door slid open behind me. Wes appeared with 2 cups. Coffee. He handed me one. He said nothing. He leaned standing beside me, looking at the same city. I looked at the dresser inside through the glass's reflection. There was a small box of dark velvet on it, closed. I didn't ask. He noticed I'd seen. "It's not today," he said, quietly. "It's for a day." "Okay. Is that okay?" "It's okay." He took a sip. I took another. That's when I remembered. At some point in the night, I was already nearly asleep, the room dark, his arm heavy on my back. He'd murmured against my hair, low, almost to himself. "Even if I forget everything someday, you'll be the only thing my body will know." At that hour, I'd smiled into his chest and didn't answer. Now, on the balcony, with the lukewarm coffee between my 2 hands, the sentence came back. I looked at him sideways. His expression was calm, slightly unfocused, looking at the gray horizon. He didn't seem like a man who thinks about forgetting. Why would he talk about forgetting just now? I didn't ask. I rested my temple lightly on his shoulder. He rested his chin on the top of my head. The city kept waking up below, indifferent. I took another sip of coffee. And even so, even in the middle of that quiet morning, that heavy arm on my shoulders, that first day of a conscious choice, the sentence stayed, small, quiet, tucked into a corner of my chest, like a key placed in a lock I didn't yet know existed somewhere in the house. "Hey, Kay here. That's it for book 1. But guess what? Book 2 is already done. You can grab access to it for just a small fee." If he forgot everything, would I still be the woman he'd choose again? Months after finding the love I never believed I deserved, my world fell apart in a single instant. An explosion erased almost 8 months of Wes's memory. Suddenly, I was a stranger to the man who swore he'd never let me fall. The car where we met, the hidden coffee shop, the gray rooftop at dusk, the thin necklace he placed around my neck with trembling hands. All of it vanished. Pregnant and carrying a secret that could change everything, I took the necklace off my own neck, arranged it in a perfect circle on the hospital nightstand, and disappeared to my aunt's island. Better to vanish than to be looked at as if I'd never existed. Meanwhile, his family worked to erase my trail. They sat him at a table with Indira, the family's engagement ring shining between them like a sentence. "Go back to the perfect life you had before her," they whispered. But something still haunted him. The bitter taste of cheap coffee invaded his mouth with no explanation. The cold gray of the rooftop weighed on his chest, right where the necklace should have been. He refused the ring. And then came the desperate call. Too late. While I decided whether to fight for a man who didn't remember choosing me, others erased my name from his life with cold, determined hands. The love that brought us together became the deepest wound. And what if the forgetting were stronger than any promise? And what if his body recognized my touch before his mind? And what if, in the end, he discovered that the only woman he swore to protect was the one he himself had forgotten? Because now, as everything crumbles again, there remains only one cruel question echoing in the silence. Would he choose me again? Or have I already been erased forever? Like I said, that was just a taste of book 2. To watch it uncensored, just click on the first link here in the pinned comment. I'll see you on the other side in a few seconds. Remember, Just click on the first link down here in the comments, and Book 2 complete, no ads, no interruptions, will already be available for you. It's very simple. Book 2 is something I'm loving making. You're loving it too, so I promise there will be more. It's where you find increasingly spicy stories, a true dark romance. And precisely because this version is getting more and more heated, the video isn't well accepted publicly on YouTube. This closed environment is where I can actually share my essence and where I feel free to do my best work for you. More news coming soon. I'll be waiting for you on the other side. Unfortunately, many people have been downloading our audio, effectively copying the entire story, and simply reposting it on YouTube. If you want to watch the original story and be the first to catch the upcoming ones, look for Kay's Sweet Love on YouTube for the best billionaire and CEO romance content. Remember, the official channels are Kay's Sweet Love on YouTube and the My Stories platform. I'll be waiting for you there. With love, Kay. Congratulations! Your purchase has been confirmed, and you now have full access to books 1 and 2 of all our stories, completely ad-free and uninterrupted. Everything is available on the My Stories platform, from mafia romance and billionaire romance to our spicier tales. This content is ready for you now, with new episodes added daily. Access is simple. Just log in using the same email address you used for your purchase. A confirmation has also been sent to that same email. The My Stories platform is very simple and intuitive. Each image represents a story. If it has a book 2, just click and press play. Everything is already unlocked for you. You can also rate each story, leave a like, and write a comment. Your feedback will be visible to all our other subscribers. This is our romance universe, so please feel free to interact. From this moment on, this is officially your home for romance stories. Just head over to mystoriesromance.com and press play. Welcome to the family.